Minji Park woke up at 5 in the morning just like every other day. Her small apartment was quiet and dark. She lived alone in a tiny place on the 4th floor of an old building. The walls were thin. She could hear her neighbors moving around sometimes. But this early, everyone was still sleeping. She got out of bed and went to the bathroom. The mirror showed a tired face looking back at her. She was 42 years old. Her black hair had some gray strands now. There were lines around her eyes from years of working hard. She washed her face with cold water. It helped wake her up. Minji put on her work uniform. It was a plain gray dress with a white apron. She had 3 of these uniforms. She washed them every other day. The dress was old but clean. She took pride in looking neat even though her job was simple. She made herself a cup of instant coffee and ate a piece of bread. Breakfast had to be quick. She needed to catch the bus at 6 o'clock. If she missed it, she would be late for work. Being late was not acceptable. Minji had never been late in 15 years. The bus ride took 40 minutes. Minji sat by the window and watched the city wake up. Seoul was beautiful in the early morning light. The tall buildings looked pink and gold as the sun came up. She liked this quiet time. It gave her time to think before the busy day started. She arrived at Hanseong University at 6:45. The campus was huge and beautiful. There were old buildings mixed with new modern ones. Trees lined the walkways. In spring, cherry blossoms covered everything like snow. Now it was autumn, and the leaves were turning red and gold. Minji worked in the main cafeteria. It was a large building that could feed thousands of students. She had worked there for 15 years. She started when she was 27, right after her mother got sick. Her mother needed medicine. Medicine cost money. So Minji took the first job she could find. Her job was simple. She served food to students and professors. She cleaned tables. She wiped down counters. She made sure the salt and pepper shakers were full. She refilled the napkin holders. It was not difficult work, but it was tiring. She stood on her feet for 8 hours every day. The other cafeteria workers were kind to her. There was Mrs. Choi, who was 60 and had worked there for 30 years. There was young Sung Min, who was saving money for college. There was Mr. Han, the cook, who always saved her a good lunch. They were like a small family. Minji never minded her job. Some people looked down on cafeteria workers. They treated them like they were invisible. Students would talk loudly about their classes and not say thank you when she handed them their food. Professors would walk past without seeing her. But Minji understood. She was part of the background. That was okay. What made her job interesting was watching people. During her lunch break, she would sit in a corner of the dining hall with her meal. She would watch the students study. She would listen to professors talk about their research. The university was full of smart people doing important things. She found it fascinating. About 5 years ago, she noticed something new. Students had started playing chess in the commons area. The commons was a large, open space with tables and chairs. It was right next to the cafeteria. Students would sit there between classes. Some studied, some talked, and some played chess. At first, Minji did not know anything about chess. She knew it was a game with black and white pieces on a checkered board. That was all. But she started watching because she was curious. During her lunch break, she would eat her food and watch the games. She watched every day for weeks, then months, then years. She never played herself. She never asked questions. She just watched. She saw how the pieces moved. She saw how players made their decisions. She saw patterns forming on the board. Minji had always been good at remembering things. When she was young, her mother would send her to the market with a long list. Minji never wrote it down. She just remembered everything. At work, she could remember which professor wanted extra sugar in their coffee. She could remember which student was allergic to peanuts. Her memory was just something she had always had. As she watched chess games, she started remembering the patterns. She could see a position on the board and remember seeing something similar before. She could watch a game and know she had seen those same moves in a different game weeks ago. The patterns stored themselves in her mind like photographs. She never told anyone about this. Who would care? She was just a cafeteria worker. Chess was a game for smart people. Professors played chess. Students who studied mathematics played chess, not people like her. Minji had never gone to university. After high school, she had wanted to study. She had been good at school. Her teacher said she was smart, but her family had no money. Her father had left when she was young. Her mother worked in a factory. There was no money for university, so Minji got a job instead. She worked in a convenience store. Then her mother got sick with cancer. The treatments were expensive. Minji took the cafeteria job because it paid a little more. She also worked nights cleaning offices, 2 jobs every day for years. Her mother died 3 years later. By then, Minji was 30. She was tired. She had no savings. She had no education. She kept the cafeteria job and stopped cleaning offices. This was her life now. She had accepted it. But watching chess became her secret pleasure. During her 30-minute lunch break, she would sit and watch. The games were like puzzles. They were beautiful in a way. Each piece had its own way of moving. Together, they created something complex and interesting. One day, a student left a chess book on a table. Minji found it while cleaning. She looked around. Nobody was watching. She opened the book. It showed famous chess games from history. She looked at the diagrams. She recognized some of the patterns. She had seen them in the games she watched. She quickly closed the book and put it in the lost and found. But something had changed. She realized that the games she watched every day were connected to something bigger. Chess had history. It had famous players. It had strategies that people studied. From then on, she watched more carefully. She tried to understand not just what players did, but why they did it. She could not read chess books or take lessons, but she could watch and remember. And she did, every single day. On this particular morning in October, Minji started her work like always. She put on her plastic gloves. She filled the containers with rice and soup. She arranged the side dishes. Students started arriving at 7:30. The cafeteria filled up quickly. As she served food, she heard students talking excitedly. Something special was happening at the university. She caught pieces of conversation. An important visitor was coming. Some kind of chess event. The students seemed very excited about it. Minji did not think much about it. Important people came to the university all the time. It had nothing to do with her. She just kept working, serving food, cleaning tables, being invisible. She had no idea that in 2 days everything in her quiet life would change forever. The next day, the whole university was buzzing with excitement. Posters appeared on every wall. They showed a man's face. He had sharp blue eyes and silver hair. The posters said, International Chess Exhibition in big letters. Below that it said, featuring Grandmaster Viktor Volkov. Minji saw the posters while she was refilling the napkin holders in the dining hall. She stopped to read one. Viktor Volkov was a world chess champion. He had won tournaments all over the world. He was coming to give a lecture and play exhibition matches. The event would be held in the university's main auditorium tomorrow evening. Students were talking about nothing else. At every table, Minji heard conversations about Volkov. Some students had watched his games online. Others had read books about his strategies. Everyone seemed to know who he was. Everyone except Minji, but that was normal. She did not have a computer at home. She did not follow chess news. Mrs. Choi came over while Minji was wiping down a table. "Did you hear about the chess master coming?" she asked. "I saw the posters," Minji said. "They asked if some of us can work the event," Mrs. Choi said, "serving refreshments during the lecture. Do you want to do it? They will pay extra." Minji thought about it. Extra money was always good. And she was curious to see a real grandmaster. She had watched hundreds of games, but they were all played by students and professors. What would a world champion look like when he played? "Yes," she said. "I will do it." Mrs. Choi smiled. "Good. We need to be there at 5 o'clock tomorrow. The event starts at 6. The next day felt longer than usual. Minji could not stop thinking about the evening event. She tried to focus on her work, but her mind kept wandering. What would a grandmaster's games look like? Would she recognize the patterns? Would it be completely different from what she had seen before? At 4:30, she went to the staff bathroom and changed into a clean uniform. She made sure her hair was neat. At 5 o'clock, she and Mrs. Choi went to the auditorium. The auditorium was beautiful. It had high ceilings and wooden walls. There were seats for 500 people. At the front was a stage with a podium. Behind the podium was a large screen. Tech people were setting up cameras and microphones. A young woman in a suit told Minji and Mrs. Choi what to do. They would serve tea and coffee during the break. There would be cookies and small sandwiches. Everything had to be perfect. This was an important event for the university. People started arriving at 5:30. They were mostly professors and graduate students. Some people came from outside the university. Minji could tell by their expensive clothes and confident way of walking. These were important people from the chess world. At exactly 6 o'clock, the lights dimmed. The university president walked onto the stage. Everyone clapped. The president gave a short speech about the honor of hosting such a distinguished guest. Then he introduced Viktor Volkov. The Grandmaster walked onto the stage and everyone stood up clapping. Minji stood at the side of the room watching. Volkov was tall and thin. He wore an expensive dark suit. His silver hair was perfectly styled. He walked with complete confidence like someone who had never doubted himself in his life. He reached the podium and smiled at the audience. His smile was cold and perfect. When he started speaking, his voice was smooth and powerful. He spoke English with a thick Russian accent. Chess is the most beautiful game in the world, he began. It is pure logic, pure strategy, pure intelligence. When you sit at the chessboard, nothing else matters. Not money, not status, not luck. Only the power of your mind. He talked for 45 minutes. He showed famous games on the big screen. He explained complicated strategies. The audience watched with complete attention. Even Minji, who usually felt lost during academic lectures, found herself fascinated. The way he talked about chess made it sound like art and war combined. But there was something about him that bothered her. He seemed arrogant. When he talked about opponents he had beaten, he smiled in a way that was not kind. When someone in the audience asked a question, he would pause before answering, as if judging whether the question was smart enough. After the lecture, there was a 15-minute break. This was when Minji and Mrs. Choi brought out the refreshments. They carried trays of cookies and small sandwiches. They poured tea and coffee. People gathered in small groups talking excitedly about the lecture. Volkov stood at the front of the room surrounded by professors and important-looking people. They asked him questions. They laughed at his jokes. Minji had to bring refreshments to that group. She felt nervous. She was not used to being around such important people. She carried a tray of teacups over. "Excuse me," she said quietly. "Would anyone like tea?" Most people ignored her. They just took cups without looking at her. But Volkov glanced at her for a second. His eyes passed over her uniform and her face. Then he looked away, as if she was furniture. Less than furniture. Nothing. Minji felt her face get warm. She was used to being invisible. But the way he looked at her felt different. It felt like contempt. After the break, the second part of the event began. This was what everyone had been waiting for. Volkov would play simultaneous exhibition matches. He would play against 12 people at the same time. 12 chessboards were set up on the stage. 12 chairs faced them. The university president announced the names of the people who would play. They were all professors or top students. Some had won regional tournaments. They walked onto the stage looking nervous and excited. Volkov stood at the center. He would walk from board to board, making one move at each board, then moving to the next. The challengers would sit and think while he was at other boards. It was a test of his skill. Playing 12 games at once seemed impossible to Minji. The games began. Volkov moved quickly and confidently. He would look at a board for just a few seconds, make his move, and move on. His opponents took much longer to think. They studied the board carefully before moving their pieces. Minji was supposed to clean up the refreshments, but she could not stop watching. She stood at the side of the room, her tray forgotten in her hands. The patterns on the boards were forming. She could see them even from a distance. 20 minutes into the games, Volkov had a clear advantage on every single board. His opponents looked stressed. Some were sweating. One professor kept shaking his head in disbelief. 30 minutes in, the first opponent resigned. Then another. Then another. Volkov did not smile or celebrate. He just nodded and moved to the next board. It was clear he expected to win. This was not a challenge for him. It was a performance. By the end of the hour, all 12 opponents had resigned. Volkov had won every game. The audience erupted in applause. The Grandmaster took a bow. His cold smile was back. Then he held up his hand for silence. "I enjoyed these games," he said. "But I must be honest, they were not difficult. These were good players, yes, but good is not enough. Chess requires genius. True genius is rare." Some people in the audience shifted uncomfortably. His words seemed rude, but no one said anything. He was a world champion. He could say what he wanted. "I would like to offer one more challenge," Volkov continued. "I will play one more game tonight. Against anyone. Anyone at all who thinks they can challenge me." The audience murmured. People looked at each other. Was anyone brave enough to step forward after watching him destroy 12 good players? A young professor stood up. "I will play you, Grandmaster," he said. Volkov smiled. "Excellent. Come to the stage." The young professor walked up. A fresh board was set up. The game began. Minji watched from her position at the side. This game was different from the simultaneous matches. Volkov gave it his full attention, but the result was the same. After 25 minutes, the professor resigned. "Anyone else?" Volkov asked, looking at the audience. No one moved. No one dared. Then Volkov's eyes swept the room. They landed on Minji, still standing at the side with her tray. He looked at her uniform, at her simple appearance. A cruel smile formed on his lips. "What about you?" he said, pointing at her. Every head in the auditorium turned. Everyone stared at Minji. Her heart started pounding. Her hands gripped the tray tightly. "Me?" she said, her voice barely a whisper. "Yes, you," Volkov said. His tone was mocking. "I said anyone. Why not the help? Or do you people know your place?" The room fell silent. Some people looked shocked at his rudeness. Others looked curious. Would the cafeteria worker actually accept? Minji felt her face burning. She wanted to disappear, but something in his tone made her angry. The way he said, "You people." The way he assumed she was beneath him. The way he thought the world was divided into important people and invisible people. She thought of her mother working in the factory until cancer took her. She thought of 15 years serving food to people who never said thank you. She thought of all the chess games she had watched, all the patterns stored in her memory, all the quiet hours of learning something beautiful just because she wanted to. Minji set down her tray. "Yes," she said, "I will play you." The auditorium exploded with shocked whispers. For a moment, nobody moved. The auditorium was completely silent. Everyone stared at Minji. She could feel hundreds of eyes on her. Her heart was beating so hard she thought everyone could hear it. Then the whispers started. People turned to each other, speaking in low voices. Some looked shocked, some looked amused, some looked uncomfortable with what Volkov had done. Mrs. Choi rushed over to Minji. "You don't have to do this," she whispered urgently. "He's just being cruel. You can say no." But Minji shook her head. Something had changed inside her. The fear was still there, but it was mixed with anger now. Anger at being treated like she was nothing. Anger at all the years of being invisible. She had accepted her place in life. She had never complained. But this was different. This man was not just ignoring her, he was mocking her. "I will play," she said again, louder this time. Volkov laughed. It was not a nice laugh. "Wonderful. This will be entertaining. Come to the stage." Minji's legs felt weak as she walked down the aisle. The audience watched her every step. She could hear more whispers. Some students were trying not to laugh. Some professors looked concerned. The university president looked very uncomfortable. She climbed the steps to the stage. The lights were bright up here. She felt exposed. She was a cafeteria worker in a plain gray uniform standing in front of 500 people. This was not her place. She did not belong here. A young man rushed to set up the chessboard. He placed it on a table between two chairs. The pieces were beautiful. They were made of wood and felt heavy and important. Minji had never touched real chess pieces before. The game she watched used plastic pieces or cheap sets. "Do you know how to play?" Volkov asked. His tone suggested he thought she might not even know the basic rules. "Yes," Minji said quietly. "Have you played before?" "No." This caused another wave of whispers. She had never played before? Then how could she possibly challenge a grandmaster? This was going to be a disaster. People felt sorry for her. This would be humiliating. Volkov's smile grew wider. He was enjoying this. "Well then, this is a historic moment. Your first chess game will be against a world champion. As a courtesy, you may have the white pieces. You move first." He said courtesy, like he was doing her a great favor, like he was being generous to someone far beneath him. Minji sat down in the chair. Her hands were shaking. She clasped them together in her lap so no one would see. The board sat between them. 64 squares, 32 pieces. It looked exactly like the boards she had watched for 5 years. But sitting here, with everyone watching, it felt completely different. It felt terrifying. Volkov sat down across from her. He leaned back in his chair, completely relaxed. He looked like he was about to watch a mildly amusing show. Some professors took seats in the front row to watch closely. Others remained standing. The whole auditorium waited. Minji stared at the board. Her mind was racing. She had watched hundreds of games, maybe thousands. She had seen so many opening moves, so many patterns. But now, actually sitting here, she felt frozen. What was she doing? She was a cafeteria worker. She had never played a game in her life. She only knew chess from watching. That was not the same as playing. She was going to make a fool of herself in front of all these people. She thought about standing up and walking away, apologizing, saying it was a mistake. But then she looked up at Volkov. He was smiling that cold smile. He expected her to quit. He wanted her to quit. That was the whole point. He had called her up here to humiliate her and remind her of her place. Minji took a deep breath. She reached out and touched a piece. It was the pawn in front of her king. She picked it up. It felt smooth and solid in her hand. She moved it forward 2 squares, the king's pawn opening. It was the most common first move in chess. She had seen it 1,000 times. It was simple and basic, but it was correct. Volkov barely glanced at the board. He immediately moved his own pawn forward to meet hers. He did not even think about it. This was beneath his attention. Minji made her second move, knight to f3, another standard move. She had seen this pattern many times. It was from the Italian game opening. Students played it often in the commons area. Volkov responded instantly. His moves came fast and automatic. He was playing the most basic responses, the kind you would teach to a beginner. He was not taking her seriously at all. He occasionally looked out at the audience and smiled, as if sharing a joke with them. The first 10 moves happened quickly. Volkov barely looked at the board. Minji took longer to think, but not too long. The patterns in her memory were guiding her. She had seen this position before. Not exactly this position, but something close. A game that Professor Kim played against a visiting lecturer last spring. Around move 11, something changed. Minji moved her bishop to c5. It was an unusual square for the bishop in this position. Volkov finally looked at the board with real attention. He studied it for a moment. Then he shrugged and made his move. But Minji noticed. For just a second, he had looked uncertain, like something was not quite right. She felt a small spark of hope. Maybe she was not completely lost. Maybe the pattern she remembered actually meant something. She continued to play. Each move came from her memory of other games. She was not calculating like a trained player. She did not know theory or strategy. She only knew what she had seen. But she had seen so much. Game after game. Year after year. The patterns were stored in her mind like photographs. Move 15. Minji placed her knight on d4. It looked like an aggressive move, but it was actually defensive. It controlled important squares and protected her king. This position came from a game she had watched 2 months ago. A graduate student from Japan had used it against one of the chess club presidents. Volkov finally sat up straight. He leaned forward and studied the board carefully. His smile faded. The game was not going as he expected. This cafeteria worker was not playing like a beginner. Her moves were strange. They did not follow the standard patterns. But they were not mistakes. The audience sensed the change. The whispers grew louder. People stood up to see the board better. Professor Kim, who taught mathematics, pushed his way to the front row. He pulled out his phone and started taking pictures of the position. Interesting, Volkov said. It was the first word he had spoken since the game started. He did not sound amused anymore. He sounded surprised. He made his next move after thinking for almost 2 minutes. This was the longest he had thought so far. Minji responded within 30 seconds. She moved her queen to b6, another unusual square. But she had seen this in a game last week. Volkov's eyes narrowed. He studied the board for 3 full minutes before moving. When he did move, it was aggressive. He pushed his pawn forward, attacking her knight. It looked like a strong move. It looked like he was taking control. But Minji saw the pattern. She had seen this exact attack before. Last year, in autumn, a game between 2 professors. The attack looked dangerous, but it was not. If you responded correctly, the attacking player would be in trouble. She moved her knight away to a better square. Then she moved her rook to d8, putting pressure on Volkov's center pawns. The position was getting complicated now. Pieces were tangled together. It was hard to see who was better. Volkov was not smiling anymore. He was concentrating hard. His moves took longer now. Sometimes 3 minutes, sometimes 4. The audience was completely silent. Nobody talked. Nobody moved. They all sensed they were watching something unexpected. Minji's hands had stopped shaking. The fear was still there, deep in her stomach. But something else was there too. A strange calmness. The board in front of her looked familiar. She had seen these patterns. She knew them. They lived in her memory. She was not thinking in words. She was not calculating like Volkov was. She was simply seeing. When she looked at the board, certain moves felt right. They felt like they belonged, like putting the final piece in a puzzle. Move 20. Volkov offered a trade. If she took his knight with her bishop, he would take her bishop with his pawn. It seemed like an equal trade. But something felt wrong about it. Minji stared at the position. Then she saw it. If she took the knight, he would push another pawn forward. That pawn would create problems for her king. She declined the trade. Instead, she moved her other knight to a defensive square. Volkov looked surprised again. He had expected her to take the knight. Most players would have, but she had seen past it. You have watched many games, Volkov said suddenly. It was not a question. It was a statement. Minji nodded. Yes, many games. But you never played. No. Volkov leaned back in his chair. He looked at her with new eyes. Not with contempt anymore, with curiosity. Remarkable, he said quietly. He returned his attention to the board. The game continued, but everything had changed. The Grandmaster was no longer playing casually. He was playing seriously, and the cafeteria worker who had never played a game in her life was holding her own against a world champion. The audience could not believe what they were seeing. This was not supposed to be possible, but it was happening right in front of them. Minji Park, invisible cafeteria worker, was playing real chess. And she was not losing. Not yet. The game entered its middle phase. More pieces had been traded off the board. The position was complex. Even the professors watching could not easily say who was winning. But one thing was clear. Minji was still in the game. She had not collapsed. She had not made any terrible mistakes. Volkov was thinking longer and longer before each move. Sometimes 5 minutes. Once, even 7 minutes. Sweat appeared on his forehead. He kept wiping it away with his hand. His perfect silver hair was getting messy. He ran his fingers through it while he stared at the board. Minji also thought longer now. The positions were getting harder. She did not recognize all the patterns anymore. Sometimes she had to trust her instinct. Sometimes she moved a piece just because it felt right. She could not explain why. She just felt it. Move 28. Volkov launched an attack on the king side. He pushed his pawns forward, trying to break through to her king. It looked dangerous. The professors in the front row leaned forward. This could be the end. Grandmasters were famous for their attacks. Once they started pushing forward, beginners could not stop them. But Minji did not panic. She looked at the position carefully. She had seen attacking positions before. Many times. Students often tried to attack too quickly. When they did, they left weaknesses behind. She looked for those weaknesses now. Yes. There. Volkov's knight was far from his king. It was helping with the attack, but it left his own king vulnerable. And his queen was in an awkward position. If Minji could somehow create a threat against his king, he would have to stop attacking and defend. She moved her rook to the back rank. It did not stop his immediate threat, but it created a different threat. A threat to his king. Volkov saw it immediately. He stopped and stared. His attack was strong, but if he continued it, her rook would cause serious problems on his back rank. He sat back in his chair. He rubbed his face with both hands. He had to make a choice. Continue attacking and hope to break through first, or stop attacking and defend. For a long time he sat there thinking. Finally he moved his rook back to defend. His attack had stopped. Minji had forced the world champion to retreat. A whisper ran through the audience. This was incredible. Unbelievable. Professor Kim was typing rapidly on his phone. He was recording the moves. He wanted to analyze this game later. Other professors had also pulled out their phones. Everyone wanted a record of what they were seeing. The position stabilized. Both players were careful now. Volkov was not taking any more chances. He was treating Minji like a real opponent. Every move was calculated. Every piece movement was considered carefully. Minji felt exhausted. She had been standing on her feet since 5 in the morning. She had worked all day. Now she was playing the most difficult game of chess in the world. Her back hurt, her legs hurt, but her mind was completely focused. She could not think about being tired. She had to think about the board. Move 35. The position was roughly equal. Most of the pieces were gone now. Just a few pieces remained on each side. Queens were still on the board. That was important. Queens were powerful. They could change everything with one move. Volkov tried something clever. He offered his queen for Minji's queen and a rook. In material value, it was a good trade. He would get more value than he gave up. Most players would take it. It looked like a good deal. Minji reached for her rook. Her hand was halfway there when she stopped. Something felt wrong. She pulled her hand back. She studied the position again. If she made that trade, he would have a passed pawn. A pawn with nothing blocking its path to promotion. That pawn could become a queen, and with the pieces that would be left on the board, she might not be able to stop it. The trade that looked good was actually a trap. She pulled her hand back and made a different move instead. She moved her queen to safety and ignored his offer. Volkov's eyes widened. He had expected her to fall for it. For just a moment, he looked frustrated. Then his face became calm again. "You see deeply," he said quietly. "Very deeply." He took back his offer and moved differently. The game continued. Both players were tired now. It had been over an hour. Volkov was used to long games, but Minji was not. She had also worked a full day before this. Her eyes were getting tired. The board was starting to blur. She blinked hard and focused. She could not stop now. She had come so far. Further than anyone thought possible. Further than she thought possible. Move 40. The position was still complex. Neither player had a clear advantage. Volkov tried to create threats. Minji defended carefully. Every move mattered now. One mistake could end the game. The audience had grown. Word had spread through the campus. Students who had gone home came back. Professors from other departments arrived. People crowded into the aisles and stood at the back. Security had to come and make sure the fire exits were not blocked. Everyone was silent. The only sounds were the click of pieces on the board and the soft buzz of the lights overhead. Minji could hear her own breathing. She could hear her heart beating in her ears. Volkov made a surprising move. He sacrificed a pawn. He just let Minji take it for free. At first, she did not understand. Then she looked closer at the position. If she took the pawn, her queen would be slightly out of position. He could push a different pawn forward and create threats. It was not a real sacrifice. It was bait. Take the pawn and face problems. Or leave it, and keep her queen in a better position. Minji left the pawn. She moved her queen to a more active square instead. Volkov nodded slowly. He was not surprised anymore when she found the right moves. He expected it now. This woman who had never played a game somehow saw things that experienced players missed. It was extraordinary. It should not be possible. But it was happening. Move 45. Volkov tried one more aggressive plan. He pushed his remaining pawns forward in a coordinated attack. He brought his queen close to her king. He created multiple threats at the same time. It was beautiful chess, powerful chess, the kind of chess that won world championships. Minji looked at the threats. There were so many. She could not stop all of them. If she defended one threat, another would break through. This was it. This was the end. She had played well, but now the Grandmaster was showing his true skill. She was going to lose. She stared at the board. Her mind raced through memories of games she had watched. Was there any pattern that could help? Anything at all? She felt tears building behind her eyes. She had tried so hard, but hard work was not enough against genius. Then she saw something. It was not in Volkov's position. It was in her own. Her pieces were scattered, defending different threats. But if she moved them in a certain order, they could work together. Not to defend, to attack. It was a pattern she had seen once. Just once. Last winter. A game between two professors. One professor was attacking powerfully. It looked like he would win. But the other professor ignored the attack and created a bigger counterattack. A counterattack so dangerous that the first professor had to give up his own attack to defend. Could she do the same thing here? Did she have time? If she was wrong, she would lose immediately. But if she was right, she might survive. She might even win. Minji took a deep breath. She moved her queen across the board to an aggressive square. It attacked Volkov's king. It ignored all his threats against her own king. She was counterattacking. Volkov's hand was reaching for a piece to continue his attack. He stopped. He pulled his hand back. He stared at her queen. His face went pale. He saw what she had done. If he continued his attack, her queen would deliver checkmate in 3 moves. He had to stop. He had to defend. He moved his knight back to protect his king. His attack was over. Just like that, all his threats disappeared. He had to defend now. The position had completely reversed. The audience erupted in gasps and excited whispers. Professor Kim stood up, his mouth open in shock. Other professors were pointing at the board, explaining to students what had just happened. The cafeteria worker had just counterattacked a Grandmaster. And it had worked. Mrs. Choi was standing at the side, her hands over her mouth. Tears were running down her face. She knew Minji better than anyone here. She knew how hard Minji worked. How invisible she had been all these years. And now everyone was seeing her, really seeing her. Minji did not hear the audience. She was focused on the board. The position was still difficult. But something had changed. Volkov was no longer controlling the game. She was. Her pieces were active. His pieces were defending. For the first time since the game started, Minji felt like she might actually win. Volkov wiped sweat from his forehead again. He studied the position for a very long time. 8 minutes passed, then 9. His hand hovered over different pieces. He was calculating, thinking, searching for a way to turn the position around. But sometimes in chess there is no way. Sometimes a position is just lost. The question was whether Volkov would see that. and what he would do if he did. The Grandmaster took a deep breath. He looked up at Minji for the first time in many moves. Their eyes met. In his eyes, she saw something she had never seen before. Respect. He reached out to the board. His hand moved to his king. And then, slowly, he tipped it over. The universal sign of resignation. The game was over. Minji had won. For 3 seconds, nobody moved. Nobody breathed. The auditorium was frozen in complete silence. The tipped king lay on its side on the board. Volkov's hand was still touching it. Minji stared at the board, not fully understanding what had just happened. Then the auditorium exploded. People jumped to their feet, they clapped and shouted. Students cheered. Professors called out in amazement. The sound was like thunder. It filled the whole building. Some people were laughing, some were crying. Everyone was shocked and thrilled and completely amazed. Minji sat in her chair, frozen. Her mind could not process what had happened. She had won. She had beaten a world chess champion. That was not possible. That could not be real. She must be dreaming. Or maybe she had fainted and this was all in her head. But the noise was real. The clapping was real. And Volkov sitting across from her was real. He stood up slowly. He looked tired and a little bit shaken. But when he looked at her, his face was not angry. It was not embarrassed. It showed genuine respect. He walked around the table and extended his hand to her. Minji stood up on shaky legs. She took his hand. It was warm and strong. They shook hands while cameras flashed all around them. People were taking pictures and videos on their phones. This moment would be all over the internet by tomorrow. That was remarkable, Volkov said. His voice was quiet, meant only for her. I have played thousands of games, against grandmasters, against world champions, but I have never seen anything like what you just did. I just watched games, Minji said. Her voice was trembling. I just remembered. You did more than remember, Volkov said. You understood. That counterattack at the end, that was brilliant. Where did you learn that? I saw it once, in a game between two professors here, last winter. Volkov shook his head in wonder. You saw it once and remembered it well enough to apply it in a completely different position. Do you know how rare that is? Most players study their whole lives and never develop that kind of pattern recognition. The university president rushed onto the stage. His face was red with excitement. Ms. Park, that was incredible. Simply incredible. I had no idea we had such a talent working in our cafeteria. More people crowded onto the stage, professors wanting to shake her hand, students asking questions, camera operators trying to get footage, security guards trying to keep order. It was chaos. Minji felt overwhelmed. There were too many people, too much noise, too much attention. Mrs. Choi pushed through the crowd and grabbed Minji's arm. Come on, she said. You need to sit down. You look pale. She led Minji off the stage to a chair in the front row. Someone brought water. Minji drank it gratefully. Her hands were still shaking. Mrs. Choi sat next to her, holding her hand, smiling with tears in her eyes. You were wonderful, Mrs. Choi said. I always knew you were special. I always knew. Professor Kim came over, his phone in his hand. Ms. Park, I recorded the whole game. I need to analyze it. That position at move 45 when you counterattacked. That was a concept from the Tal School of Chess. Do you know who Mikhail Tal was? Minji shook her head. She did not know chess history. She did not know famous players. She just knew what she had seen. He was a world champion in the 1960s, Professor Kim explained. Famous for brilliant counterattacks, for ignoring threats and creating bigger threats. That's what you did. You played like Tal without ever studying him. More professors gathered around. They all wanted to talk about the game, about specific moves, about the patterns she had used. Minji tried to answer their questions, but she felt confused. She did not know the names of the patterns. She did not know the theory. She just knew what looked right on the board. Volkov was talking to the university president and some other important-looking people. He kept glancing over at Minji. After a few minutes, he excused himself. and came over to where she was sitting. The professors immediately stepped back, giving him space. He was still a world champion. He commanded respect wherever he went. "Ms. Park," he said, "may I speak with you privately for a moment?" Minji nodded. They walked to the side of the auditorium where it was quieter. Volkov looked different now. The arrogance was gone. He looked humble, almost embarrassed. "I must apologize," he said. "What I did tonight was wrong. Calling you up to the stage like that, making fun of your job, treating you with contempt, it was cruel and unnecessary. You did not know I could play," Minji said quietly. "That makes it worse, not better," Volkov said. "I should not have treated anyone that way, regardless of their skill. I have become arrogant over the years. Success does that sometimes. It makes you forget that every person has value. Every person has hidden depths." He paused and looked at her seriously. "You have a gift, Ms. Park. A remarkable gift. I need you to understand how rare it is. I have trained my whole life in chess. I have studied with the best coaches. I have memorized thousands of games. And tonight, you beat me using only observation and memory. That should not be possible. But you did it." "What do I do now?" Minji asked. She felt lost. Her quiet life had exploded in one evening. Tomorrow, what would happen? Would things go back to normal? Could they go back to normal? "That is up to you," Volkov said. "But I would like to make you an offer. I have connections with chess academies all over the world. If you want to study chess seriously, I can help arrange it. You could be trained by the best coaches. In a few years, you could be competing in international tournaments." Minji felt dizzy. International tournaments? Her? A cafeteria worker who had never played a game before tonight? "I have a job," she said. "I have bills to pay. I cannot just stop working and study chess." "Many academies offer scholarships," Volkov said. "Full scholarships that include living expenses. With your natural talent, any academy would be honored to have you. You could study full-time and not worry about money." Minji did not know what to say. It sounded like a dream. But dreams did not come true for people like her. Life was not a fairy tale. "I need to think about it," she said. "Of course," Volkov said. He pulled out a business card and handed it to her. "This is my personal email. Take all the time you need, but please, at least consider it. The chess world needs new voices, new perspectives. Someone like you could change everything." The crowd was starting to thin out. It was late. People had homes to go to, jobs to work tomorrow. But many people came up to Minji before they left. They congratulated her. They asked for her autograph. They wanted to take pictures with her. Minji felt like she was in a dream. A strange, overwhelming dream. These same people had walked past her every day for 15 years without seeing her. Now they wanted her autograph. Now she was important. Young Soo, a graduate student who played chess in the Commons area, came up to her. He looked nervous. "Ms. Park," he said, "I've seen you watching us play. I never imagined you understood the game so well. Would you be willing to play with us sometimes? We could learn so much from you." "I only played one game," Minji said. "And you beat a grandmaster," Young Soo said. "Please, it would be an honor." Finally, the auditorium was mostly empty. Just Minji, Mrs. Choi, and a few staff members cleaning up. The chessboard still sat on the stage. The pieces were back in their starting positions, ready for the next game. Minji walked up to the stage one more time. She looked at the board. It seemed different now. Before tonight, it had been something she observed from a distance, something for other people. Now it was something she had touched, something she had mastered, even if just for one game. Mrs. Choi came up beside her. "What are you thinking?" she asked. "I don't know," Minji said honestly. "Everything changed so fast. This morning I was serving breakfast. Tonight I beat a world champion. Tomorrow, I don't know what happens tomorrow." "You don't have to decide anything tonight," Mrs. Choi said. "Come on, let me drive you home. You must be exhausted." They walked out of the auditorium together. The campus was dark and quiet. Most students were in their dorms or apartments. The buildings were just dark shapes against the night sky. Minji had walked this path thousands of times, but tonight it felt different. She felt different. When she got home to her small apartment, she was too tired to think. She took off her uniform and fell into bed, but she could not sleep. Her mind kept replaying the game. The feel of the pieces in her hand, the look on Volkov's face when she made the counterattack, the sound of 500 people applauding. She got up and went to the window. She looked out at the city. Seoul was beautiful at night, lights everywhere, millions of people in their homes, most of them working ordinary jobs like her, living quiet lives like her. But was that her life anymore? Could she go back to being invisible after tonight? Did she want to? Minji touched the business card in her pocket. Volkov's email address was printed there in neat letters. One email could change everything. Or she could throw the card away and go back to serving food and cleaning tables. Both choices were terrifying in different ways. She went back to bed but did not sleep until very late. When she finally did sleep, she dreamed of chessboards. 64 squares stretching out forever, patterns forming and reforming, beautiful and endless. And in the dream, she was not afraid. She knew where every piece belonged. She understood the patterns. The board made sense. Perfect sense. For the first time in her life, Minji felt like she was exactly where she was supposed to be. Minji woke up at 5 in the morning just like always. For a few seconds, she lay in bed wondering if last night had been real. Then she saw her uniform on the floor. She saw Volkov's business card on the small table by her bed. It had been real. She got up and went through her morning routine. She washed her face. She put on her uniform. She made instant coffee. Everything was the same as every other morning, but she felt different. Her hands were not tired. Her back did not hurt as much. She felt awake in a way she had not felt in years. The bus ride to the university was normal. Same driver, same route. But when Minji got off at the campus, she noticed something different. A group of students near the bus stop were looking at their phones. When they saw her, they whispered to each other and pointed. Minji walked quickly toward the cafeteria. More students stared at her as she passed. Some smiled, some waved. One student even called out, "Great game." Minji felt her face get hot. She was not used to this attention. When she entered the cafeteria, the other workers were already there. They all turned to look at her. For a moment, nobody spoke. Then Mrs. Choi started clapping. The others joined in. Mr. Han, the cook, came out from the kitchen, clapping and grinning. "Our champion," Mr. Han said. "I saw the videos online this morning. Everyone is talking about it. The cafeteria worker who beat the Grandmaster." "Videos?" Minji said. "Someone recorded the whole game and posted it," Sungmin said, showing her his phone. "It already has 50,000 views. Look at the comments. Everyone is calling you a genius." Minji looked at the screen. There she was, sitting at the chessboard. The video showed her making the counterattack at move 45. The comments were in Korean, English, Russian, and other languages she did not recognize. People from all over the world had watched her game. "This is too much," she said quietly. "You deserve it," Mrs. Choi said warmly. "All those years of watching and learning. Now everyone can see how smart you are." The cafeteria opened at 7:30. The morning rush started immediately. But it was different today. Students did not just grab their food and leave. They stopped to look at Minji. They smiled at her. They said good morning. Some asked if they could take pictures with her. Minji tried to work normally, but it was difficult. She was not invisible anymore. Every move she made was watched. It made her nervous and uncomfortable. She preferred being in the background. This spotlight was too bright. Around 9 o'clock, a man in a suit came to the cafeteria. He asked to speak to Minji. Mrs. Choi told her to go ahead. She would cover her station. The man introduced himself as Park Jae-sung, the university's public relations director. "Ms. Park, you've created quite a sensation," he said with a big smile. "The university is receiving calls from news organizations all over the country. They want to interview you. KBS, SBS, even international news. CNN called this morning. I don't want to do interviews, Minji said immediately. I understand it's overwhelming, Mr. Park said. But this is a wonderful story. A story that inspires people. It shows that talent can be found anywhere, that education is not the only path to excellence. I just want to do my job, Minji said. Of course, but perhaps just one interview? With a local paper, it would be good for the university, and it might be good for you too. Minji wanted to say no, but she thought about what Volkov had said, about opportunities, about her gift. Maybe she owed it to herself to at least talk about what happened. One interview, she said. Just one. Mr. Park looked relieved. Wonderful. I'll arrange something for this afternoon during your break. At lunchtime, Minji sat in her usual spot in the commons area. But today was different. The chess tables were more crowded than usual, and Young Soo, the graduate student from last night, came over to her table. Ms. Park, he said, would you like to play a game? A real game, not just watching? Minji hesitated. Part of her wanted to say no, but another part of her was curious. Could she do it again? Or was last night just luck? Okay, she said. One game. Young Soo set up the board. A crowd gathered immediately. Students and professors formed a circle around the table. Word spread fast. The cafeteria worker was playing again. Everyone wanted to watch. The game began. Minji had white pieces. She made the same opening move as last night. King's pawn forward 2 squares. Young Soo responded with the same defense Volkov had used. But then the game went differently. Young Soo played in a more careful style. He was not underestimating her. He had seen what happened to Volkov. He knew she was dangerous. The game lasted 30 minutes. Minji found herself enjoying it. The pressure was less than last night. She was not playing for her dignity. She was just playing, exploring the patterns, seeing what worked and what did not. She won the game. Young Soo shook her hand with a big smile. You're amazing, he said. Your style is so unusual. You don't play like anyone else, but it works. Other students wanted to play too. Minji looked at the clock. She still had 15 minutes of break left. One more game, she said. She played another student, then another. She won all 3 games, not because she was trying to win, but because she saw the patterns. She understood the board in a way that felt natural and easy. When her break ended, she went back to work, but something had changed inside her. Playing those games had felt good. It had felt right, like she was using a part of herself that had been sleeping for years. The afternoon passed slowly. Minji's mind kept drifting back to the chessboard. She thought about positions, about moves, about patterns she had seen but never fully understood. She wanted to see them again, to study them, to learn more. At 3 o'clock, the reporter arrived. She was a young woman from the Korea Herald, a local English newspaper. She had a notebook and a camera. Mr. Park brought her to a quiet room where Minji could talk without the noise of the cafeteria. Thank you for agreeing to this, the reporter said. My name is Lee Ji-won. I promise to keep this brief. Okay, Minji said. First, tell me about your background. Where did you grow up? How did you learn chess? Minji told her story, about her mother, about not having money for university, about getting the cafeteria job, about watching chess games during her breaks. She kept it simple and honest. And you never played before last night? Ji-won asked, her pen moving rapidly across the notebook. Never. I only watched. That's extraordinary. What made you accept Grandmaster Volkov's challenge? You could have said no. Minji thought about that question. Why had she said yes? He made me angry, she said finally. The way he talked to me, like I was nothing, like people who do simple jobs don't matter. I wanted to show him that was wrong. Ji-won smiled. And you certainly did that? What are your plans now? Will you study chess seriously? I don't know yet. I need to think about it. Grandmaster Volkov told reporters this morning that you have more natural talent than anyone he's ever met. He said you could be a world champion within 5 years if you trained seriously. How does that make you feel? Minji did not know what to say. World champion? Her? It seemed impossible. Ridiculous. But then again, last night had seemed impossible too. It scares me, she said honestly. My life was simple. I knew what to expect every day. Now everything is different. I don't know if I'm ready for that. Change is always scary, Jiwon said gently. But sometimes it's necessary. Sometimes we're meant for bigger things than we imagine. The interview lasted 20 minutes. Jiwon took some photos of Minji. She thanked her and promised to send her a copy of the article when it was published. When Minji returned to work, she felt exhausted. Not from her body, but from her mind. Too many thoughts. Too many possibilities. Too many choices to make. At 5 o'clock, her shift ended. Usually, she went straight home. But today, she found herself walking to the commons area instead. The chess tables were busy as always. Students playing, laughing, learning. Professor Kim saw her and came over. Ms. Park, I've been hoping to talk to you. I analyzed your game with Volkov. Do you have a few minutes? Yes, Minji said. They sat at an empty table. Professor Kim opened his laptop and showed her the game move by move. He explained things she had done instinctively. He gave names to the patterns she had used. The Sicilian defense, the Tal counterattack, the Nimzowitsch overprotection. You see, he said, you were using advanced concepts without knowing their names. That's what makes you so special. Most people learn the names first and then try to apply the concepts. You did the opposite. You absorbed the concepts through observation and then applied them naturally. Can I learn more? Minji asked. Can someone teach me the things I don't know? Absolutely, Professor Kim said. In fact, the chess club would be honored if you would join us. We meet 3 times a week. We study games. We play against each other. We learn together. You would be very welcome. I work during most of your meeting times, Minji said. We can adjust the schedule, Professor Kim said quickly. For you, we can meet in the evenings or on weekends. Whatever works for you. Minji felt warmth in her chest. These people wanted her there. They valued her. Not despite her background, but including it. She was not an outsider anymore. I would like that, she said. Thank you. She walked home as the sun was setting. The business card was still in her pocket. She still had not decided what to do about Volkov's offer. But she was starting to think that maybe, just maybe, she did not have to choose between her old life and a new one. Maybe she could have both. Maybe she could keep her job and study chess. Maybe she could stay herself while becoming something more. When she got home, she did something she had never done before. She sat at her small table and drew a chessboard on a piece of paper. She drew the pieces. She replayed her game with Volkov from memory. Every move was clear in her mind. Then she tried playing against herself, moving pieces for both sides, exploring different possibilities. It was hard doing it on paper instead of a real board. But it worked. She could see the patterns. She could learn. Minji smiled. For the first time in her 42 years, she felt like she was growing. Not just existing, not just surviving. Actually growing, learning, becoming. Whatever happened next, whether she took Volkov's offer or stayed at the university, she knew one thing for certain. She would never be invisible again. Not to others. And most importantly, not to herself. 3 days after the game with Volkov, Minji's life had completely changed. The article in the Korea Herald went viral. It was picked up by international news agencies. Within 48 hours, her story was on BBC, CNN, and news sites in 20 different countries. The headline on most articles was similar. Cafeteria worker with no training defeats chess grandmaster. Some called her the Korean chess Cinderella. Others called her the hidden genius. Minji did not like any of those names. She was just herself. Nothing more, nothing less. Her phone, which usually stayed silent except for the occasional spam call, now rang constantly. Reporters wanted interviews. Chess organizations wanted to meet her. Complete strangers sent messages through social media accounts she did not even know she had. Someone had created a fan page for her with 10,000 followers. It was overwhelming. Minji stopped answering her phone unless it was someone she knew. She stayed off the internet. She tried to keep her routine normal. But normal was impossible now. The university president called her to his office. Minji had never been in the administration building before. It was all polished wood and expensive carpets. She felt out of place in her cafeteria uniform. President Cho was a kind man in his 60s. He offered her tea and gestured for her to sit in a comfortable chair. "Ms. Park," he said. "First, I want to apologize. You've worked here for 15 years, and I'm ashamed to say I never knew your name until 3 days ago." "That's okay," Minji said. "I was just doing my job. But that's exactly the problem," President Cho said. "You are clearly an intelligent, talented woman. Yet you've been serving food and cleaning tables. We failed to see your potential. The university failed you." "I don't think of it that way," Minji said. "I needed a job. The university gave me one. I'm grateful for that." President Cho smiled. "You're very gracious. But I want to make you an offer. The university would like to give you a scholarship. A full scholarship to study whatever you want. You could finally get the education you never had the chance to pursue." Minji's heart started beating faster. A scholarship, a chance to study, to learn. It was what she had wanted when she was 18. But that was 24 years ago. Was it too late now? "I'm 42 years old," she said. "I would be older than most professors." "Age means nothing when it comes to learning," President Cho said. "We have students of all ages. And frankly, I think you could teach our students as much as they could teach you. Your story would inspire everyone on campus." "Can I think about it?" Minji asked. "Of course, take all the time you need." That evening, Minji went to her first chess club meeting. Professor Kim had scheduled it for 7 o'clock so she could attend after work. The meeting was in a classroom on the 3rd floor of the mathematics building. When she arrived, the room was packed. There were maybe 40 students and several professors. All the chairs were taken. People stood along the walls. Everyone turned to look at her when she entered. "Ms. Park," Professor Kim called out. "Please come to the front, we saved you a seat." Minji walked through the crowd, feeling everyone's eyes on her. There was a chair at the front next to Professor Kim. She sat down, her face burning with embarrassment. "Everyone, as you know, this is Minji Park," Professor Kim said. "She has agreed to join our chess club. We are incredibly fortunate to have her." The room erupted in applause. Minji wanted to disappear. This was too much attention, too much pressure. "Today we're going to do something special," Professor Kim continued. "Ms. Park, would you be willing to play a simultaneous exhibition? Like what Volkov did? You could play against 6 of our members at the same time." Minji's stomach tightened with nervousness. Volkov had made it look easy. But she had only played a handful of games in her life. Could she really play 6 games at once? "I can try," she said quietly. 6 boards were set up. 6 students sat down to face them. Minji stood at the center just like Volkov had done. The room fell silent. Everyone watched. The games began. Minji walked from board to board, making her moves. At first it was very difficult. She had to remember 6 different positions, 6 different patterns. Her mind felt stretched thin. But after the first few moves, something clicked. She stopped trying to remember each game separately. Instead, she saw them as variations on similar themes. The patterns connected. One game informed another. Her mind organized the information naturally, the same way she remembered where students liked to sit or who liked extra napkins. The games lasted 40 minutes. Minji won 4 games, drew 1, and lost 1. The student who beat her was Lee Hyojin, a third-year student who had won regional tournaments. When Hyojin won, the room applauded for both of them. "That was incredible," Professor Kim said. "You played 6 games at once and only lost 1. And the one you lost was against our best player. Do you realize how remarkable that is?" Minji did not feel remarkable. She felt tired and a little bit disappointed that she had not played better. After the meeting, students gathered around her with questions. How did she remember all the patterns? What did she think about during games? Could she teach them to see the board the way she did? Minji tried to answer, but she did not really understand her own gift. She just saw things. She could not explain how or why. Young-soo walked her to the bus stop after the meeting. You know, he said, some of us have been playing chess for 10 years. We study every day. We read books. We watch videos. And you're better than us after 1 week. It's kind of frustrating. I'm sorry, Minji said. Young-soo laughed. Don't be sorry, it's amazing. You're amazing. I just hope you'll be patient with us slower learners. I don't think I'm the one who should be teaching, Minji said. Yes, you are, Young-soo said seriously. You see things we don't see. That's valuable. Don't let anyone tell you it's not. When Minji got home, she found an envelope that had been slipped under her door. It was from Volkov. Inside was a handwritten letter. Dear Ms. Park, it began. I am writing to you because I cannot stop thinking about our game. I have replayed it hundreds of times. I have shown it to other grandmasters. Everyone agrees that what you did should not have been possible. I have spent my entire life studying chess. I have sacrificed everything for this game. Relationships, health, normal life experiences. And yet, you picked it up in a week and beat me. Part of me is humbled by this. Part of me is inspired. And part of me is questioning everything I thought I knew about chess and learning. I understand that you are still deciding what to do. I want you to know that whatever you decide, I respect it. If you want to study chess seriously, I will help you. If you want to keep your life as it is, that is also valid. You owe nothing to anyone. But I will say this. You have a gift that appears once in a generation, maybe once in a century. The chess world has never seen anyone like you. You could change how we understand this game. You could inspire millions of people. That is a heavy burden, I know, but it is also an opportunity. The choice is yours. With respect and admiration, Viktor Volkov. Minji read the letter 3 times. Then she folded it carefully and put it in a drawer. She was not ready to respond yet. She still did not know what she wanted. Over the next 2 weeks, her life settled into a new routine. She worked at the cafeteria during the day. She attended chess club meetings 3 times a week. She played games during her lunch breaks. Students no longer stared at her like she was a celebrity. They just included her. She was part of the community now. The offers kept coming. A chess academy in Moscow wanted her to study there. A university in California offered her a teaching position, even though she had no degree. A publishing company wanted her to write a book about her life. She declined them all. She was not ready for any of that. But she was ready for something. She could feel it. A door had opened inside her. She had spent so many years just surviving, working, existing. Now she wanted more. She wanted to grow, to learn, to become. One evening, after a chess club meeting, Minji walked across campus to the administration building. It was late, but there were still lights on in President Cho's office. She had called ahead to say she was coming. President Cho welcomed her with a smile. Ms. Park, have you made a decision about the scholarship? Yes, Minji said. She took a deep breath. I would like to accept it, but not for chess. President Cho looked surprised. No. What would you like to study? Education, Minji said. I want to study how people learn. I spent 5 years watching chess games and learned more than people who studied formally for years. I want to understand why. I want to know how to help other people learn the way I learned. President Cho's smile grew wider. That's a wonderful choice. And very fitting. You could help revolutionize education. I don't know about that, Minji said. I just want to understand, and maybe help others who learn differently. When would you like to start? Next semester I need time to prepare and I want to keep working in the cafeteria. At least part-time. That job gave me everything I have now. I don't want to leave it completely. I'm sure we can arrange that, President Cho said. They shook hands. As Minji walked out of the building, she felt lighter than she had in years. She had made a choice. Not the choice everyone expected, not the choice that would make her famous or rich, but the right choice for her. She would study. She would learn about learning. She would keep playing chess, but not professionally. She would help other people discover their own hidden talents. Minji pulled out her phone. She had one more decision to make. She opened her email and found Volkov's address. She typed a message. Dear Grandmaster Volkov, thank you for your kind letter and your generous offer. I have decided not to pursue chess professionally, but I will continue to play and study it in my own way. I hope you understand. Thank you for seeing me as a person, not just a cafeteria worker. That meant more than you know. With gratitude, Minji Park. She hit send before she could second-guess herself. Then she put her phone away and started walking home. The night was cool and clear. Stars were visible despite the city lights. Minji looked up at them and smiled. She was 42 years old and just starting to live, just beginning to discover who she really was. It was never too late to begin, never too late to grow, never too late to become. 6 months later, Minji walked across the university campus with a backpack full of books. It was early spring. The cherry blossoms were blooming, covering the paths with pink and white petals. She still worked mornings in the cafeteria, but now she spent afternoons in classrooms as a student. At first, being a student had been terrifying. She was older than most of her classmates. Some were young enough to be her children. She worried they would judge her, that professors would think she did not belong, that she had made a terrible mistake. But those fears faded quickly. Her classmates were kind. They asked her questions about her life experience. They wanted to hear her perspective. Professors treated her with respect. They valued her unique viewpoint. The older students in her program, those in their 30s and 40s, became her friends. They understood what it meant to return to education after years of working. Her first semester classes were Introduction to Education Theory, Psychology of Learning, and Social Foundations of Education. She also took a mathematics class, just because she wanted to. Numbers had always made sense to her, like chess patterns did. She discovered that she loved learning, not just absorbing information, but understanding why things worked the way they did. Every lecture felt like watching a chess game unfold. Patterns emerged, connections formed, ideas clicked together. Her professors noticed her unique way of thinking. When they taught about learning styles, Minji shared her own experience, how she had learned chess through pure observation, how patterns stored themselves in her memory without conscious effort. Her education professor asked her to give a presentation to the class about experiential learning. The chess club continued to meet 3 times a week. Minji attended whenever she could. She was no longer the center of attention. She was just a member. She played games, she lost some, she won some, she learned from both. Young-soo had become her regular chess partner. They met every Wednesday for lunch and played speed chess while eating. He taught her opening theory. She taught him to trust his intuition. They learned from each other. You know what's funny? Young-soo said one day while they were playing. 6 months ago you were this mysterious genius who beat a grandmaster. Now you're just Minji. You lose games. You make mistakes. You're human. Is that disappointing? Minji asked, moving her knight. No, Young-soo said. It's better. Heroes are hard to relate to, but teachers can be regular people, and you're a great teacher, even when you don't realize it. Minji smiled. She moved her queen into position. Checkmate in 3 moves. Young-soo studied the board and groaned. I hate when you do that. I never see it coming. The story of the cafeteria worker who beat a grandmaster slowly faded from the news cycle. New stories replaced it. New viral moments captured the internet's attention. Minji was grateful. She had never wanted fame. She had only wanted dignity. But the story had lasting effects. Chess clubs at universities across Korea saw increased enrollment. Women's chess programs received more funding. Several working people who had hidden talents contacted the university, asking how they could pursue education while keeping their jobs. President Cho created a new scholarship program for non-traditional students, inspired by Minji's story. Minji's mother's friends from the factory reached out to her. They were proud. They had always known she was smart, they said. They were happy she finally got her chance. Minji visited them sometimes, bringing coffee and pastries. They told her stories about her mother, how proud she would have been. Viktor Volkov stayed in touch. He sent her emails occasionally, updating her on chess news. He never pressured her to change her mind about professional chess. He just shared the game with her, like a friend sharing something beautiful. Minji appreciated that. She wrote back, telling him about her studies, about the patterns she was discovering in education theory. One day he sent her a message that surprised her. "I've been thinking about our game, about what it taught me. I have been too rigid in my thinking, too focused on traditional training methods. You showed me that there are other paths to mastery. I have started teaching differently because of you. More observation, more pattern recognition, less memorization. My students are improving faster. Thank you for that lesson." Minji read the message 3 times. She had changed a world champion's thinking, not through arrogance or force, but simply by being herself, by showing an alternative path. In her education theory class, Minji wrote a paper about different learning modalities. She used her own experience as a case study, how she had learned chess through observation rather than instruction, how her photographic memory for patterns was a form of intelligence that traditional education often missed. Her professor gave her an A and asked to share the paper at an education conference. Mrs. Choi still worked in the cafeteria. She was proud of Minji, but also slightly sad. "I miss having you here full-time," she said one morning while they were preparing breakfast. "The new workers are nice, but they're not you." "I'm still here," Minji said, "just not as much." "I know, and I'm happy for you. Really, I am. It's just change. Change is hard for old women like me." Minji hugged her. Mrs. Choi had been more than a co-worker. She had been family when Minji had no family left. "You're not old, and you'll always be important to me." The cafeteria job had changed too. Students and professors talked to her now. Not because she was famous, but because they knew her. She was part of their community. She served their food, but she was also their classmate, their chess partner, their friend. One afternoon, a first-year student came to the cafeteria looking nervous. She was a young woman who always ate alone. Minji had noticed her before. She reminded Minji of herself at that age. Invisible, quiet, uncertain of her place. "Excuse me," the student said. "Are you Minji Park, the one who beat the chess grandmaster?" "Yes," Minji said. "I'm not good at chess, but I watched your story online. And I wondered, did you ever feel like you didn't belong? Like you were in the wrong place?" Minji stopped wiping the counter. She looked at the girl carefully. "Every single day," she said honestly. "I still feel that way sometimes. But you're doing amazing things now. You proved everyone wrong." "I didn't prove anyone wrong," Minji said gently. "I just proved myself right. I always belonged. I just didn't know it yet, and neither did anyone else." The student's eyes filled with tears. "I'm studying engineering. Everyone else is so smart, I feel stupid all the time." "Come sit with me," Minji said. "My break starts in 5 minutes." They sat in the commons area. Minji listened while the student talked about her struggles, about feeling out of place, about wondering if she made the wrong choice. Minji shared her own story. Not the famous part, the real part. The years of doubt, the fear, the moments when she almost gave up. "What changed?" the student asked. "Someone saw me," Minji said. "Really saw me. Not as a cafeteria worker, not as someone beneath him, just as a person. And then I started seeing myself differently too." "I want to see myself differently," the student said. "Then start looking," Minji said. "You're here, aren't you? You're trying. That counts for more than you know." They talked for 30 minutes. When the student left, she was smiling. Minji watched her walk away and felt a warmth in her chest. This was what she wanted to do. Not win chess tournaments, not become famous, just help people see themselves clearly. That evening, Minji had dinner with Professor Kim and a few chess club members. They went to a small restaurant near campus. They ate Korean barbecue and talked about chess, school, life. It was normal, comfortable, fun. "You seem happy," Professor Kim observed. "Happier than when I first met you." "I am happy," Minji said. She realized it was true. Despite the hard work, despite the challenges of studying while working, despite being older than her classmates, she was genuinely happy. "What changed?" he asked. Minji thought about that. So much had changed, but also nothing had changed. She was still herself, still the same person who served food and watched chess games. The difference was that now she believed she could be more, and others believed it too. "I stopped being invisible," she said finally, first to others, then to myself. Later that night, Minji sat at her small table with her textbook spread out. She had an exam next week. She needed to study. But first, she pulled out her chess set. The real one she had bought with her first paycheck from the scholarship stipend. Real wooden pieces, a real board. She set up a position from a famous game. Bobby Fischer versus Boris Spassky, 1972. She had seen the game analyzed during a chess club meeting. Now she wanted to study it herself, to understand the patterns, to see the beauty in it. As she moved the pieces recreating the game from memory, she thought about how far she had come. 6 months ago, she had been invisible, just a cafeteria worker who watched chess games from a distance. Now she was a student, a teacher, a friend, a person who mattered. But the most important change was internal. She had stopped limiting herself, stopped accepting that her place was in the background. She had discovered that she could be whoever she wanted to be, learn whatever she wanted to learn, become whoever she wanted to become. Minji finished recreating the game and studied the final position. It was beautiful, complex, balanced, like life itself. She cleaned up the pieces and opened her textbook. She had studying to do. Tomorrow she would work in the cafeteria, then attend classes, then help young Sue prepare for his tournament, then work on her research paper about learning patterns. It was a full life, a busy life, a good life. Minji smiled to herself as she started reading. She had spent so many years thinking her life was small and insignificant, but it had never been small. She had just been looking at it from the wrong angle. Now she saw clearly. Every person had hidden depths. Every life had patterns and possibilities. The key was learning to see them, in yourself and in others. And Minji Park, former invisible cafeteria worker, current student and chess player and teacher and friend, was just beginning to understand how vast those possibilities could be. She was 43 years old, and her life was just getting started.